Greetings. I'd like to send my heartfelt sympathy and solidarity with everybody who's involved in the Occupy Wall Street and other protests going on. This is just off the cuff. I would like to share some thoughts with you about how this is going to grow and where we're going to go from here. First of all, everything will be much more effective if we carry it out in a nonviolent spirit. And that means much more than just keeping, the broken bottles and the burning tires off the scene. It means more than keeping drugs and alcohol off the scene. It means we definitely have to have a way of sequestering troublemakers and provocateurs without being violent towards them. There's been a serious problem in almost every set of demonstrations since Seattle and probably before. We have to do all those things, but actually I think what's going to be much more effective in the long run is if we come into this with the right attitude. And the right attitude is not a lovey-dovey attitude, everybody is fine. The right attitude is, look, you people are doing something wrong, but we don't hate you as people. We want to separate you from what you're doing. We want to respect you, we want to understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, we will not let you continue doing these things to us. That's the nonviolent attitude. That helps people who are carrying out an act of injustice separate themselves from the injustice. You're giving them a refuge. You're giving them a place to go to where they'll be respected and appreciated, but not inside that intolerable system that they've created. So once we get that attitude down, we want to think about something that the peace movement often forgets to think about, and that is we get into these spontaneous protests. This is not totally spontaneous, but almost. And we don't think further down the road. We should be thinking very seriously, okay, if this is going to succeed, what is it going to look like? Does it mean people are going to come out of those buildings on Wall Street and say, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize you didn't like this. Let's talk about how to change it. Unrealistic, but not absolutely impossible. I know that there have been demonstrations out here in California, for example, against the weapons labs, where the speaking equipment failed, and scientists from the weapons labs came out with the equipment that we needed to continue the demonstration. So we do touch people. It's not impossible. But more importantly, we should think about what are we going to do if this doesn't succeed? And the mistake that we want to avoid is to being stuck on the one tactic, namely the street protest, the occupation, which after all is not the tactic that we came up with, right? We're kind of copycatting on everything that's going on in Arab Spring, and that could be partly the right thing to do, but it might not fit our situation. So I think we need to step back and think strategically, how committed are we? Are we in this for the long term? And if we are, we can't stay here on Wall Street in Zuccotti Park or wherever else we're protesting indefinitely. We need to eat, we have a life. So how are we going to continue this when protest is no longer the modality in which we continue it? I don't have any concrete suggestions to make just yet because there isn't quite enough time, but we'll be happy to talk with you about it at the Metta Center, mettacenter.org. But maybe I can put this in a contextual framework. If you look at the most successful campaigns that have taken place in the last 100 years, you see that they tended to have three modalities, I guess we can't say three strings to their bow because that's violent, but they had three feathers in their cap or something. First of all, they did what you're doing, the satyagraha part, or the obstructive program, as I like to call it, or the direct resistance, the nonviolent action. Very important. And up to this point, what you're doing is just beautiful. But they also had at the back of that, I'm thinking particularly of Gandhi now, at the back of that they had something he called Constructive Program, where they built the society that they wanted to have without telling other people to get off their back, without telling other people you have to give it to us. And it's not too difficult to see how we could have some Constructive Program features. How are we going to get involved now that we've met one another? and we know that we share this concern, we share this passion, how about getting involved in local economies, in barter-based economies and localized networks of support so that we're no longer vulnerable to the big banks? That would be one aspect of how we could build a constructive program. And see, that goes on even when the protest has to stop. You cannot protest forever. The Miami model comes in, police brutality comes in, drives us off the street. I want to get back to that in a second. So we need protest. We also need constructive program, which is less dramatic but has that staying power that keeps us together. And we need some kind of strategic overview so that we know when to do which. We need to have the choice of doing protest when it's effective, and at the key moment when we're feeling very strong and we have made our point loud and clear, lots of people have joined us, then we voluntarily step back and say, okay, we're going to regroup now and come back in a different place with a different strategy. So we need to have obstructive program or protest. We need to have constructive program going on all the time, and we need to be able to side. Everybody stop protesting now, get over into the equivalent of the spinning wheel or whatever we're doing. Having mentioned a very disagreeable topic of police brutality, I want to say one thing quickly about it. In the early days of nonviolence, the term jujitsu was often used to describe nonviolence. It was called moral jujitsu. What it brings in strategically is the idea that if your opponent uses more force, he's going to lose. You can use that more force, that greater force, that disproportionate force against your opponent. Not to hurt the opponent as a person, of course, as we said before, but to get him or her to stop doing what he's doing through public pressure, appealing to the reference public, or what have you. So when there is police brutality, don't hate the police officers who are carrying it out. Don't feel sorry for yourself and don't get whiny, even though it hurts. I know that it hurts. I know that tear gas hurts. I've been tear gassed. Pepper spray hurts even more. I understand that. But instead, let's use this. Let's say to people, look at what this system has had to do to defend itself, because our appeal is just and our cause is only right and reasonable. So let's do some strategic thinking about that brutality aspect, but even more importantly, let's do some long-term thinking about where this movement is going to go. Thank you very much and good luck.